Today I want to talk to you about an interesting subject, flat roof condensation. All right, Chicago, welcome to another edition of our YouTube channel where we talk about Chicago roof repairs and Chicago roof replacements. Flat roof condensation doesn't happen on every flat roof, but there are circumstances where it can happen. How to maybe some of the preventative measures, how to spot it is what I want to talk about today. So flat roof condensation, what to know, how we're going to spot it, how can it be avoided, and some of the measures you can take to correct it. Sometimes you can't always correct it fully because it has to do with the building envelope, but we're going to talk a little bit about that today. This is how it starts a lot. When is a leak not a leak? So we get called out, homeowners like, my building's leaking, or usually it's a larger residential project, 4, 10 units. We've had that, seems like more than just a small residential home. The homeowners had multiple roofers out for repairs. There's signs, when you go up there, there's signs of repeated patching and caulking, and there's been so many roofers that have attempted to fix this, but yet the leak persists. What is it and what's happening? It's still leaking. This means that it's typically internal. So let's take a look here. Here's a building that we did a couple years ago where we did the inspection. So one of the things that that I see right away when it's condensation is all the patching and all the work that other roofers have done. So this is a mod bit roof. You can see someone's taken a granulated membrane and they've taken the coping off, wrapped it over. The homeowners just kept having leaking at the front no matter how many roofers they had out. You've got tar here that they've put around it. They put tar here. You've got caulk up here. So multiple roofers have come out and tried to patch and patch and patch. Well, once you see this is typically a good sign for me that it may not be a leak coming from the outside. Just a little bit to go over the last one, there's extra wall flashing added. On the next photo, you're gonna see all this snow here, and this is where the problem starts. Here's another parapet wall where this is smooth mod bit, and they took granulated and they wrapped every single, if you can see, they wrapped every single parapet wall in new granulated. They took the coping off, again, in an attempt to fix this leak that wasn't really a leak. So what we did, we came and we did not just a core sample of the membrane, we actually took plywood off to investigate this problem. We saw more tar and patching. Our team cut into it to inspect to see what was really going on, and we found moisture on the inside. This was actually on West Belmont. Here's one of my guys making one of the first test cuts. This is funny to me because you're seeing even more like tar and like roofers are trying, they're giving it a shot, they're just not hitting it. The problem with this was there was no rooftop insulation. We only found base sheet and modified on the roof, the smooth modified bitumen. Mold, we saw it right away below the membrane. This building was built in 2012. The Homeowners Association the previous year to try to get rid of this leaking had spent $75,000 on tuck pointed around the perimeter in an attempt to fix this. Didn't fix it. So here's our first test cut. You can see right here, you can see already there's mold on top of the 3/4 inch plywood. They've only got a base sheet and they've got one layer of modified bitumen. There's no rooftop insulation, which is what you really want on a roof structure like this. The first cut, like I said, we saw mold already on 3/4 inch plywood, moisture trap below it. So that's early signs of that there's an internal issue. Again, here's another picture of the mold forming, and this is on top of the plywood. What you're gonna see in the next picture are some rusted nails, more mold on top of it, and we're gonna check into the inside. So see these rusted fasteners over here? You've got rusted nails on the 3/4 inch plywood, additional mold. When we cut it open, we cut a 3/4 inch section out so we could get our big head down inside of there. And you could look down each side of the building and it wasn't like raining heavy, but you could see drips falling all along. So that condensation was forming on the inside. Moisture was not really getting in from the roof down. It was all coming from moisture and heat generated from the inside. So we'll go into a little bit why this happens. We saw drips everywhere on the inside, and it was not from a storm. It's from warm air hitting that very cold deck and condensating on the bottom like a glass of ice in the summer. Here's our test cut. So we opened a pretty big hole so I can get my fat head down in there. We laid everything back, and here's the piece that we pulled back. The underside tells the real story. Once we removed it, there was mold rotting on the underside of the plywood, and then you could get a nice visual underneath. Again, we saw rusted fasteners and moisture forming down below. Here's the underside of that plywood. You can see white mold here. I don't know if it's really gonna pick it up, but you can see white mold here, and the underside, like the top side had some mold. This has got significant mold on the underside. So again, really huge sign of like that it's condensation and not coming from the outside. The white and black mold was on the plywood. Again, the nail tips on the underside, you'll see in the next one. So here's a picture from the inside as we went under. You can see these fasteners are rusted on the bottom, all these, and this is what it looked like. Look at the amount of white and black mold that was on the inside. Again, this is mainly due from moisture getting inside and no rooftop insulation. You want what's called a warm roof. You want to insulate the top of the roof above the plywood. Everything was rotting from the inside. So the next picture is a little bit more of an intense one. It wasn't on this building, but it was another one over on Southport that we pulled up. And this was a residential building. Again, it's been flashed and caulked many times. The area was repaired. This is what it looked like when we pulled the membrane. This is all from condensation from the inside. And again, look up here at this termination bar. It's been caulked so many times. This masonry had been sealed a bunch of times. Different building, but you can see roofers have tried. They're like, the homeowner's like, it's leaking here. We can't figure it out. Look at all the caulk and sealant. You can see here, I don't know if it shows in the video, more membrane has been applied. But I mean, this roof was a mess. We re-insulate it. We had to rebuild some of these joists in here. Obvious new plywood on the entire thing. But this is what can happen over long term. It gets a little bit worse. This is how and why warm air escapes into the roof. So the city of Chicago mainly and a lot of other jurisdictions have figured this out, and what they do to prevent that moisture. So let's say you've got your bathroom, you're showering, you and your wife or significant other take a shower, all that hot air goes up. Most of us have can lights in our bathroom or a vent up there to draw moisture out. Well, the city makes them put plastic or visqueen on top of the ceiling, on the ceiling, which makes sense. In theory, that would stop some of that moisture from penetrating. Once that plastic is put on there, I'll show you this slide. So here it's being put on. Sounds great, seamless, but then the electricians go back and they cut in can lights. Okay, and they cut in boxes for ceiling fans, things like that, and just a tiny little hole will draw that moisture in so much. So we've got the right idea, but when electricians and plumbers and mechanical HVAC comes back and cuts hole in the plastic, not only does it make it worse, it makes it way worse, and I'll show you why right here. So this is I'm going to show you a picture next. There's something called diffusion. So in a normal 4x8 sheet of plywood that's been installed, if there's no holes on it, diffusion means that some water will creep through it. Even a half-inch thick piece of drywall, the hot air will come up, and over a month, water will actually seep through it. Just a little bit. It's very, very minor, but it's called diffusion. So air sealing is critical. That's what the city's trying to do. They put the plastic on there. This is one of the coolest slides that I like. It's not my slide, but I got it online. So here's the diffusion we're talking about. A 4x8 sheet of plywood, over 1 month, you'll get about 1/3 of a quart that will get through that drywall. So a little bit is sneaking through. There's nothing you can do about that. Now take a look if there's a 1-inch square hole on a 4x8, so a 1-inch square hole. So think about it, your can lights and your ceiling fans and your HVAC vents. That's at least 1 inch, there. And this air leakage, because it's pulling that air and that warm air out, it can be over 30 quarts in the same month, in the same time span. So it really starts with air sealing that ceiling around can lights. So not only is it making it worse, but it's like sucking that moisture up in there at a huge rate. So the difference between the diffusion and the air leakage is major. That's why a lot of times we'll see it like above, you'll see that problem above a kitchen or above a bathroom. Or you're cooking in the kitchen. Even our bodies generate heat and can put off some moisture. One of the reasons fiberboard is installed a lot on the roofs, and it's not insulation. There's no R value or thermal resistance in fiberboard. That's why you need a rooftop insulation with R value. But we see a lot of it, 1/2-inch fiberboard installed. A lot of times it's installed on the 3/4 inch plywood just to smooth it out. The very first one that I was talking about didn't even have the fiberboard. And in this next picture, you'll see fiberboard. There's one of my guys pinching it. So the 1/2-inch fiberboard was like a sponge after we pulled this off. You can see there's moisture, it was just soaked. And again, it was condensation, not a roof leak. This next picture, you're gonna see the deck is actually wet from condensation. There's no hole, there's no puncture in the membrane. It's all from internal condensation. So I don't know if you can see this. Fiberboard's been installed, and as we got in more, you can see like there's actual water just sitting there, and this fiberboard is doing nothing. So it's tough to see. It's hard to correct the entire thing without lots of work and insulation on it. So a lot of times the plywood rot can be hidden under the deck. So in Chicago, we love to use our rooftops for building a nice deck out there, umbrella, table, cooking. We like to hang out. We like to use that extra space that we have in Chicago, our rooftop. It makes sense. But what happens if you leave it for a long time? This is a roof that we did. And you can see, so the joists or the trusses run along here, and you can see where the plywood is completely disintegrated. This one was hidden for a long time because of there was a rooftop deck on there. The rooftop deck has since been removed, but it was on here, built. The people had grills and a bar. Beautiful up there. You tear it off, and here's what it looks. You can't even walk in between here because it was sagging so much. The homeowners had no idea. All they saw above was their beautiful deck. Finally, moisture started showing on the ceiling in one of their rooms, and then as they started investigating it, boom, it was ugly. Again, over time, the plywood completely disintegrated. We had to redo some of the framing and the trusses to make those solid again. The moisture is mainly caused by lack of polyiso insulation. So today's codes, the city, if you built a new building, they want 5.2, almost that thick of polyiso insulation. Well, in Chicago, inspections don't always happen. The right amount of insulation doesn't always happen, so you get condensation. And it can take 4 or 5 years sometimes before that condensation shows up. So the builder's gone, the roofer's gone, and now the homeowners a lot of time are stuck with it. So here's just one more shot. You can see like the trusses kind of all ran this way. I mean, this plywood is a mess. So this is one of the zones. It's called the climate zone. It becomes more important to have the rooftop insulation the colder it gets. Some of the warmer climates in Florida, down here, the Carolinas, once you get into Zone 5, that's when it becomes important. And there's different percentages of insulation they want. Like in Zone 5, they want almost 40% of the insulation for your roof to be above the deck. And that's what's called a warm roof. And the percentages change, obviously, as it gets colder. You're not going to find as many issues down here with condensation because it's a warmer climate. You don't have that cold where the 2 foot or a foot of snow can sit on your roof for, a month in Chicago. How to prevent condensation on a flat roof. Here's a couple. There's actually 3 ways. The first one would be to regulate the humidity inside of your unit or your home. And you're just really not going to be able to do that. That's almost going to be impossible. You're taking showers, you're cooking. Like I said, even our bodies put off the heat and the humidity. So one of the biggest things is rooftop insulation for a warm roof. So you've got the 3/4 inch insulation. Then you want to stack the code today, like I said, 5.2. So it comes in 2.6 inch layers. So 2 layers of 2.6 is 5.2 inches. And the thermal resistance, or the R value there, is an R30. The fiberboard we were showing earlier, or like 1/2 inch insulation, is very little R value. The fiberboard basically has no R value whatsoever. And then the second one is air sealing below. As a homeowner and as a contractor, there's not much I can do about that air sealing from below. It needs to be done when that plastic is put up. Someone needs to go back and either spray foam the can lights or make sure that all that moisture is not being drawn and sucked up into the cavity or the roof plenum. So here's one of the biggest things we can do when putting it back. We try to get as much polyiso rooftop insulation as you can when you've got that sort of condensation problem. You can insulate, you can put some blown in insulation, you can seal up some of the can lights from above, but generally it's hard to do. The biggest thing you can do is add additional rooftop insulation when you can. And then the air sealing below. Other than that, that's all you can really do to prevent it from happening. That's it. That's my presentation on flat roof condensation. If you think you've got a problem, give us a call. If you've got a question about this, it is a little bit scientific and nerdy, post something down below in the comments. We look at them all, or give us a call and just ask questions. If you feel like you've got a sagging roof or some issues that a roofer hasn't been able to fix yet, give us a call out. Let's investigate. It may be flat roof condensation. Thank you so much, Chicago. Appreciate it.